we're not in the business of finding solutions looking for problems. We're in the business of looking for problems, and then we'll find solutions. And if AI is a good solution for it, fantastic. I'd rather make a little bit of a misstep and keep moving forward than sit back and overanalyze everything and try and figure it all out.
Welcome back to Season 4 of Multifamily Unpacked. Today I'm joined by Josh Gampp, SVP of Centralized Operations and Chief Technology Officer at UDR, a company that's well known for leading the way on centralization and multifamily. Today, Josh shares how they knew it was time to stop building in-house tools and partner with Funnel. He also talks about something operators often miss, that great tech won't save a messy process, and that today's teams won't settle for outdated tools. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Josh, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Multifamily Impact. I appreciate your time today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
To get going, we all like to start kind of looking in the past and understanding how folks made their way into multifamily. I think your career trajectory will tell a lot about some of the projects you've been involved in, your leadership style. So can you tell us about that point of view and how did you end up here in multifamily?
Sure. Yeah, I probably have a little bit different path than most. I started my education, University of Colorado, in chemical engineering, and got to my senior year of chemical engineering, decided I didn't want to be in a lab all day. And it was also late 90s, so the tech boom was going on. Seemed like a place you wanted to be. So I added computer science. So I got degrees in chemical engineering and computer science. So got out just in time to enjoy the tech bubble for about 8 months before it all popped and collapsed. Even that 8 months was such an interesting experience. I worked for an internet consulting company. It was a lot of fun, a lot of video games and ping pong and all of that, but an incredible amount of work. I've said those 8 months, it's probably the hardest I worked in my entire career over those 8 months. It was just crazy hours, but it taught me a ton about what's required to deliver good solutions. And when you work with a group of people that are all gung-ho, ready to go for whatever is out there, it's just a lot of fun. And after that, I worked for a small software company for 6 or 7 years. And that was a great experience. I was a software developer for a while. We had customers in Australia and New Zealand, so I did a lot of flying back and forth. That's where I shifted from development more into project management and program management and client relationship type stuff. Really enjoyed that. So I went back, got my MBA, and ran out of runway at the small company on roles I could be in. So moved to level 3 communications, now Lumen. I've big giant telecom company. Spent 6 years there. Telecom's a crazy industry. It's a crazy growth, then way pull back, then grow, and then pull back, and just a lot of waves. And so they provided me a ton of opportunity to keep growing through the relationship area, and learned a ton about how to deal with people, how to deal with teams, how to manage teams, that sort of stuff, sort of outside a little bit of even though I was in the technology group, there was a lot of non-technology pieces there. And then 12 years ago, I started UDR and started as a director of solution delivery, just running our little tiny software team and project management team, really doing a lot of services. And then I've just grown up through our transition. UDR has been really great. We'll probably talk about it a little bit as we go in here on. We tend to think innovatively, and I've had a ton of opportunity to flex my process skills and my background to help push us in the direction we've been going. So that's my background.
Yeah, well, super helpful. And for those who aren't on the video and they're just listening to the podcast, behind Josh in the background is literally a boulder map and a buffalo. So yeah, proud buff, as you referenced, coming out of there. And I do think the time in which we come into the workforce very much informs our point of view. And I think, as you said, you got to come at the tail end of the .com excitement, and then you lived through the bursting of that bubble. Certainly right now, once again, very exciting time in the world of technology with AI. Similarly, depending on which portion of the market you're in, I don't know if it's boom or bust times, but a lot going on. So I want to unpack a little bit of that segue. So you mentioned obviously experience in hands-on coding, project management, and then telecoms. I mean, I know what you do day to day now, and I know those are all very relevant. But
Yeah.
I'd like to maybe go back in time to when you first joined UDR. What were some of the things then where there were the big projects? And as you noted, and this is certainly our point of view and one that we hear in the market consistently, UDR is ahead of the curve. UDR lives on the bleeding edge of technology. And so I'm curious, when you came in, I would imagine to a certain extent didn't feel that way, but comparing it to the rest of multifamily, what were some of the big projects you had on the docket in the first several years, starting within the technology organization at UDR?
It's really interesting. You're right that when I took the job, you get in and you start digging in. And I was like, wow, this industry is so behind. Holy smokes, right? You came from telecom where we had a billion different applications and we just were constantly looking at the next thing, to an industry that just was pretty sleepy. What appealed to me though about UDR was, I don't know that when I started we had any huge technology projects. It was not too long after I started, we wound up starting our website development, building our own custom website. That was a fun project to design and help build that out. But what I liked was that technology was, even though we were a lot of service provider, we weren't only a service provider. And the group that I took over included project management, and there wasn't really a centralized project management group in the company. It was just the IT project managers. And so it let us get our hands in some of the operational pieces. One of the big projects that was just underway when I started was our Service 2.0 project, which was transforming the way we do maintenance. And it's another one where it's 12 years ago, so you forget about it a little bit. But we were at the front of, we rolled out mobile phones to every tech and got them mobile enabled. And we did a ton of work around work standards and how long should it take to fix a leaky faucet, and how do I measure those, and how do I measure the effectiveness of our technicians and what they're doing and make them more effective, but also streamline for the company and make sure we're not over hiring or under hiring and all of that. I think I was pretty fortunate that was going on when I started, because it really let me dig into a project to get my head around how the industry works and how the companies work. One of the advantages of being a tech guy is you can jump around industries, right? The technology pieces are similar. There's little nuances, but in general, especially if you're talking about ERPs and CRMs, it's interchangeable. But that project really let me dig in and get out to the sites and see how we ran the business. And it really opened my eyes and helped me to look at it and say, I think there's a lot of things we could do differently here, which has really been the driving force of my tenure at UDR, is poking and asking a lot of questions. And I still try and use I'm not the industry guy. I'm still new to this. It's been 12 years. But
You got another 5 years, you can milk that.
Yeah. I mean, I never worked in the field, right? So I always kind of can lean toward that. Like I didn't grow up in property management. So
Well said. I often have the same thought that, and frankly, there's a little bit of, I think, humility that comes with that I did not sit in a leasing office myself, and therefore I'm constantly learning it, which I think there's a helpful curiosity. I do want to highlight, because I think, again, part of what we try and unpack in this podcast is there's a lot of technology moving forward that people are excited about. We've got industry leaders, to your point, that whether coming from outside the industry, but now a decade plus in the industry, have lived through certain cycles similar before. And what's interesting is that the mobile wave you referenced back in 2012, the reality is that the world back from 2012 to 2015 did not embrace mobile the way we now understand it. I mean, everybody thinks about Facebook or Meta as these mobile tools. Facebook had to recode the entire software to be mobile friendly, right? And that was circa 2012. And so the fact that UDR was willing to go out on that limb when many folks were still in 2012 even debating whether or not we should allow online payments, right? Yeah. And so it's a big leap. And before we kind of get to, I want to tie together that work history you have in telecoms and frankly what you just said about getting on site, because I think that is something unique to the UDR culture of this operational focus.
Yeah.
I'm curious just about the culture of UDR that, and again, in 2012, when most folks were I joined the industry in 2012, Josh, and most of my sales opportunities, I was selling websites, were just get a website and allow payments, let alone mobile. I mean, mobile was like
Yeah.
5 years later, right? So what was the culture like at UDR? Clearly something in the founding of that organization led it to be a little more innovative than most.
We're a different shop now than we were then, for sure. But UDR has always been, at least the whole time I've been here, and that goes back to Scott Wesson before me and others before him, and really starts at the top with Tom, our CEO. He's always pushing for what's the next thing, what should we be looking at, and I think the culture here is that we're okay placing bets, and I love that. I love that it's fairly easy to sell a new idea. We make decisions pretty quickly by us moving to funnel. And
Pretty
for
quick,
those
yeah.
that don't know, right, we made a decision in a couple of months and then rolled our entire portfolio in 4. So
Yeah, I think we signed in December and we're full portfolio live by April.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn quick.
So when we make a decision to do something, we do it, right? And it would drive me crazy to be at a place where you're trying to pick a new solution or just make a decision for 6-9 months. Right? So
Josh, that would be fast compared to some of your industry peers.
I know. I see it, right? I talk to people and they're like, well, we're still trying to decide on a maintenance platform, right? And I'm like, the last time I talked to you 9 months ago, you were looking at maintenance platforms. How is this still a thing?
Yeah, we're on pilot V3. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't. It's probably there's definitely downsides to my personality in terms of I go too fast at times and don't bring everyone along necessarily. But we have that culture of just go, and we've not always been right. We've done things that probably haven't been the right decision, but I'd rather make a little bit of a misstep and keep moving forward than sit back and overanalyze everything and try and figure it all out. And so I think that's just the ingrained culture here is we're not happy sitting and resting on our laurels or just operating. We want to figure out how do we make it a better experience for our customers, number one. How do we make this a great company for our employees, number 2? And then how do we continue to be a better business and make money and be a good investment for our investors? And that's obviously we're a public company. That's really number 1. But we also have a strong belief that if we take care of 1 and 2, 3 naturally is going to outperform and our investors are going to be happy.
That has certainly been something I've seen throughout my interactions with UDR, dating back to, I think my first interaction was with Jerry Davis, and it was always, hey, we are beholden to quarterly public results, but we're willing to take long-term bets because we believe they'll pay off in those. I also have had others remark to me that one of the things they love about the UDR culture is that intellectual security, I guess you could say, that you have a founder-led CEO of, hey, we're going to make bets and we're going to be bold and we're going to talk about it. And I think that I certainly feel it's been a rising tide for the industry. Now, one of the trends, obviously, today now is, again, maybe sounds commonplace, but was not for a very long time, is that of centralization.
Sure.
And it means a lot of things to a lot of people in the UDR vernacular. I mean, you guys are highly centralized, highly specialized. But maybe, again, just looking back in time one more time, coming from your telecom background, I wonder in the early innings of that, as you started moving calls offsite to a corporate contact center, as you started thinking about, hey, maybe that work doesn't need to be done on site. Today, we see people make that transition relatively quickly because there's tools like Funnel that are designed for changing those workflows. I'm just curious how that even began, or maybe with some of the learnings of trying to embrace what at the time was not called centralization. It was just a new operating model that you all were pioneering.
Yeah, we settled on the super exciting, innovative title of platform, because when you can't make a decision on what you're going to call some big project, it just becomes whatever the code name was initially, right? And so that really was born out of, you got to give Jerry Davis a ton of credit and Scott Wesson both. It was their brainchild at the beginning to envision how could you sort of change the way the industry approaches the business. And you could see that there was a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of gaps. And I think whether you were a small operator or a big operator, you're running the same way. And when I was at level 3, I think we acquired 12 to 15 companies while I was there. And not small, I mean, some big companies, mergers, that sort of thing. And so you're constantly looking at, okay, how am I going to bring these things together? How am I going to take the best from what we had and what this other company was doing here, and how do I blend those, or how do I give up something over here and do this better? So you're constantly having to look at efficiencies, and they run at small margins. It's a cost cutting type of view. And I think for centralization, as we went into it, that was a little bit the idea was, hey, we can centralize a bunch of these functions, and then ultimately that'll save us on costs, and our expenses will be lower than others, and we'll outperform. And I think that proved out over time, but it was probably ultimately short-sighted. Anytime you go into a big initiative like that, just taking here, we're going to save on expenses tact is probably, well, one, it's not super inspiring. You never really want to go into like, hey guys, we're going to not spend as much on things. It was definitely a challenge to map out, well, how do all of these things, how would that even work, right? Again, we'll give Jerry a ton of credit. One of my favorite things he did as part of this was he set a big, giant goal question out there. And it was, what if no one showed up to work at the site? What does that look like? And like, I always love a big vision thing out there that's like, we're not going to get there, right? It's not going to be no one works there. But back it the other way for me then. Does it have to be one person? Does it have to be two? Like, and then keep putting the pressure on. Well, why? I think the lens we probably didn't get quite as much that we're doing now as we think about a second iteration of centralization is what's the best for our customer?
Yeah.
And are we continuing to serve our customer through any sort of ideas and changes we have? But that was really the core, and my piece of that early was running around like a crazy person trying to figure out how I was going to create a CRM and a data hub and an integration platform and all of that in 2 years, which was went from a 3-year project to a 2-year project really quickly as they got excited about the dollars.
Yeah, well, as I get to work now with you, I am grateful as well to look back at the work the foundation that was laid. I mean, a lot of the things that Funnel learned about centralization were from the partners who didn't use us initially, but were going out there and blazing a trail through the jungle. I like how you phrased it earlier, the ability to make bets. And I think the logic of centralization yielding cost savings certainly has application, and we've seen your peers follow suit and make some big claims about, hey, moving away from having an assistant community manager, we can just be more efficient by having that function centralized. That's there. But I think to your point, what happens when you make a big bet, especially in the technology world, is there's these knock-on effects. And to your point, I think the one that's been super exciting is the improved customer experience. And we know as consumers, I don't care if somebody is necessarily in an office. I want my needs met when I want them met. And certainly I think you all and the way that you centralize now, it's been really fun for us in this implementation process we just discussed, is you've really spent time thinking through, and I think the initiative as I view it now is driven by that customer experience of where is the customer frustrated? How do we meet them across this wide journey? Because we're not selling shoes or widgets or something that there's really a one-time customer interaction. It's ongoing, right? And it's even more complicated than the airlines where they're always calling about a flight. In our case, it's not necessarily renting an apartment, right? It's many use cases. And so maybe let's bring that forward to today. So clearly, you and I, we've talked quite a bit. You already alluded to the CRM has been deployed. But when you think about current initiatives, and now also, of course, you guys are not just working on Funnel. You've got amazing tools like SweetSpot on the maintenance side. And you guys were also an early adopter on the IoT side and tools like SmartRent and community managed Wi-Fi. What are some of the current initiatives today that really get you excited, that you think that these are bets you're placing about the impact that it's going to have, be that ROI or customer experience?
Yeah, I think obviously we're excited about the partnership with Funnel. Been very impressed with the platform and how far it's come. And I can tell you that as a whole, our entire company, at least our field folks, our centralized teams, really excited about it. They've been really happy with it, and we're still working through some things. And I think it's been an interesting process as we went through. I'm sure your team's telling you, hey, these guys do a lot of things maybe a little differently than we thought about them because we've been doing it for a while. And,
A hundred percent. And no, that's not that I don't that is not blowing smoke at all. I mean, that's
yeah,
genuinely fun for us is that there's a lot of calls I get off of Josh where I'm like, oh cool, we're talking about like 2019 centralization, right? Things that Funnel built 5 years ago. And that's great. And the majority of the industry still needs those things.
yes.
There when we get off calls with you guys and a few of your peers, it is often like dev roadmap, like, oh, we had not thought about that advanced use case yet.
Yep.
That's going to require us to change our calendars or change our phone routing or
Right.
things like that.
Yeah. So what I'm excited about, we really are in I alluded to it before, is sort of this, what's the next iteration look like? So I would say probably one of the mistakes we made. We did what we called platform. We rolled out the centralization effort along with a suite of tools and all of these things. And then we sort of did a little bit of a mission accomplished. We got it all out there and keep it rolling. And we've been looking at other things and doing obviously things with Smart Rent and the rollout there and GigStream and internet and Sweet Spot and the maintenance and those sorts of things. But we feel like we took our eye off of the core of that centralization piece and the platform piece. What we didn't do a good job was building. We didn't build an environment of continuous improvement, right? And it was hit a spot, check, we did it, and now we're going back and saying, all right, we missed that, right? We operate fine, but we can be better, and then I think there's a ton of opportunity for new ideas. And so about a year and a half ago, they got tired of me saying, hey, I think we can do this better, guys. Hey, you should be looking at this stuff. And they said, fine, you go do it. And so that's when not everybody knows, but I'm the chief technology officer, but I also own our entire centralized organization. So I own sales and renewals and move-ins and applications along with some other ancillary things. And marketing. It's taken me about a year to get my head around what all do we have, right? What are we doing? And our next year to 2 years is going to really be focused on what's the next iteration of that model. It's one thing to say, okay, we centralized sales, but I'm really digging into but what are we really selling, right? And you kind of alluded to it. We're not selling shoes or other widgets that it's a small purchase or it's a disposable purchase that I got to make again and again. There's obviously limitations. I only have so many homes I can sell, right? And they're locked in place. They're in a certain spot, right? They're in a submarket. They're on a street. There's various levels of capital improvement money that's been put into it. And so it's and so I think really we operate very much in the margins. Right. And it's not a sales job like when you were selling websites where you could make as much money as you wanted to as long as you were good at selling. Right. I believe it's much more of a customer service role than it is a true sales role. And so we're looking at, well, if that's the case, then how do we need to reorganize how we do things? And how do we incentivize our associates to be customer service first? And can I get to a spot? I mean, the bet I think we place is, look, if you provide a great customer experience and the person doesn't lease with us, that's okay. It's still a success. You did what I asked you to do, which was a good customer experience. And our bet is a great customer experience pays off in the long run. Mm-hmm. And if we can keep that up from first touch through when you live with us, through when you move out, through all of those things, that ultimately we're going to be the better for it, and people are going to stay longer and they're going to come back to us and those sorts of things. And so I think there's a lot to look at in centralized services, how we've siloed things. Should these be more blended roles? How are they incentivized? How do we keep the customer front and center? And so that's my world for the next probably couple of years, is how do we piece this together? And then what does that mean for the field and how they do things? And meeting, to your point you made earlier, how do you meet the customers where they want to be met?
Yeah.
And that's not an easy answer, right? It's not just one way.
No, it's not. It changes.
This person wants you to leave them be, and this person over here wants 5 phone calls. And I don't know that you can be everything to everyone, but can you be enough to that middle portion that they're super happy with you?
Yeah, well, and you're right. It's across. Not only do you have 60,000 plus units, but you've got probably 100,000 residents in your communities, right? And so you're engaging with all of them, and you're going to turn over somewhere near half of those units. So it's a wide swath with different preferences. I do want to go back to one point, and just call this out for the listeners. I think not only has UDR been an industry pioneer in a lot of ways, but even just the framing of your role, Josh, is incredibly unique in that historically in multifamily, there's IT in the closet, there's the technical team, and literally, I laugh at this, but they then often refer back to the business, right? Like they're somehow not a part
Not
of
part
the
of the
business.
business. Yeah.
And I think that the way you all have embraced technology, operations, sales, marketing as a holistic tool is much more akin to other verticals that we see, even just in the software world, that roles are constantly changing. You can't have technology decisions dictated from the closet to the business or from the business to the IT. It really needs to be one and the same. And I think in particular in this day and age, because what you just described, this unpacking or re-envisioning of the customer experience, we as consumers, our behavior is changing every day, and especially today, right? We all know that I'm using ChatGPT more than I used to use Google, right? And my interactions, my expectations are leveling up. And so what I'm curious about is, here we are, we talked about the past and the disruptive technologies. We're talking about the present. We know clearly the most disruptive technology to consumers and to enterprises is AI.
Yep.
And so how do you think about these bets that you're making today, right? So clearly, like you said, we're rethinking the customer experience. We're thinking through that lens first. And I think that one of the things that, if I heard you correctly, when you think about the platform initiative, that perhaps was over-indexed was the cost-saving side versus just the customer experience side. So you're learning that lesson today and saying, okay, well, no, we're really going to think about the customer experience and meeting customers where they are. But how do you place bets in a world in which consumer technology and consumers are changing so rapidly because of AI?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's tough, right? And that's where I think most important for my focus, and I think most important for my teams, and where I'm trying to take everything is, we're not fortune tellers, right? If I could predict where this was all going, you and I wouldn't be sitting on this podcast. I'd be on an island somewhere, right? And so it's imperative. Part of this job I had here was less around, I have this idea for the next 2 years and it's going to be this. It was more of I want to build an organization focused on continuous improvement.
Yes.
And focused on nimbleness, right? And so when you have disruptions, when you have something like AI, which obviously is a massive disruptor and it's going to come in phases, and we'll think less of AI and think about, well, what are the compartment areas, right? And how those impact us. But we're seeing changes in who our renters are in terms of age cohorts, right? We know there's a housing shortage in this country and interest rates are high and houses are stupid expensive, right? And so you're seeing that cohort, the age range is increasing, right? And there's a big difference between how a 22-year-old wants to deal with you and how a 35-year-old wants to deal with you, right? Yeah. And let alone a almost 50-year-old like me, right? And so you've got these different groups, and I think we have to be cognizant that we've got the young group and we've got the empty nesters moving back to the city bands are really blending out a lot more, right? Yeah. And so you can't make probably some of the same assumptions you used to make about who your renters are. And so it's imperative on us to say, okay, for who we have now and the bets we want to place now, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to have the best customer experience. But a huge piece has to be, are we listening to them though? Are we hearing what they're telling us? Because they'll tell us how they want us to deal with them if we listen, right? Yeah. And we did a ton of work around collecting all the communication and analyzing it, obviously implementing funnels, making that much easier for us and getting into a single channel to continue to build. But we've built a big customer experience. It's more than a dashboard. It's really a data warehouse. And we mine that all. We're constantly mining it to look for, what are people saying? Yeah. Beyond just, my neighbor's noisy. Like, what are the, can we pull out bigger level messages that allow us to say, hey, I think I think the way they want to deal with this sort of thing is changing. And so let's lean into that and let's adjust our groups to do that. So yeah, it's more about how do I make us nimble, both for change for our customer base and then change for, obviously we're a company. We want to grow. We want to expand. We want to do those kinds of things. How do I set us up to be able to do that?
Yeah, I love that you twice now have come back to the point of continuous improvement, and I think that is the key. I think too many people do view AI as monolithic. It's a product, and it's not, right? It's a technology, much like internet or mobile or whatever else, that's going to enable future opportunities. Another thing that I do like about UDR is the fact that not only do you have this, we're willing to make bets, but we are willing to have an opinion about something and to change that opinion, right? Like, you guys built a CRM because there wasn't a good one, and we actually agreed with your decision at the time. Funnel wasn't ready for your level of sophistication. And now you're saying, no, the funnel works, but we're going to leave on the table the optionality to change our AI approach or change our resident portal experience, right? So I think that balance of continuous improvement and bet making is a culture you have to have. And I do think you have to have strong leaders that are willing to put an opinion out there and say, hey, for now, we're going to optimize for this outcome. Right. And then listening to the customers to find out if that's right. Because I think UDR has always had a culture of listening, but you've married it with the culture of opinions of, hey, we want to go this direction, right? Like we're okay being the company that maybe does have less people in the office, right? So that cultural shift is something other organizations I think are really trying to mimic.
Yeah, no one has ever accused me of not having an opinion on anything. So.
Yeah, we'll get to the EPL later. We'll talk about your arsenal opinions.
Yes.
All right, so let's look ahead then. Let's look ahead, and you kind of touched on this one already, but I want to think, instead of just asking, how do you make bets? I'm curious as you're interacting with your teams, right? Because this is more of like a today, but also looking forward. So you're introducing new technologies to the properties and into your centralized teams, and you're saying, hey, we're going to do this new tool, Funnel. How do you think about the change management down at the site level? Because like you mentioned, you're interacting with broad teams, centralized teams, marketing teams. Is it important, like you said earlier, to be selling a certain version of that, not just, hey, we're looking for cost savings? Talk to me about the change management with the people.
Absolutely. I mean, change management is, an organization, that's, I'd say it's almost the anchor to my speedboat, right? And my personality is go, 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 change, change, change. How do we keep adapting, right? How do we keep going? I've got a great change management team, and I know your team's worked with a bunch of them through this implementation. They're spectacular, and Kim Garfield and her team, best in the industry and beyond, I think. So they're really good about throwing that anchor out behind my boat and saying, hey, look, the organization can only absorb so much change at a time, right? And
can I just give you a compliment on this? Because I think it's again something I would love for other customers to echo. I think they do it in a way that is not often you hear people in corporations call, like attorneys or accountants, the destroyers of hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of change management teams that are like that, that they just come in and say, well, you can't do that, and here's why. I get the privilege of sitting on a lot of calls with your team, and they are very direct. They're not going to sugarcoat it. They're going to tell you this is why this may not work. But they're solutions oriented. And so the operating folks can have just a direct conversation of, well, if that couldn't work, what could? Yeah. And you come out with solutions rather than problems of, okay, well, let's start with this, or let's talk to that person. Yeah. So I agree. The change management will, in a good way, slow down the dreamers like you and I and say, here's some realities. But if you have the right people that also are on board with the end state, then they're not looking for reasons to kill it. And I will say that's what slows down organizations. If you get a change management person who feels the reward is to stop it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's one of the lessons I learned early on as a manager, and definitely have leaned into as I've grown and moved up the ladder. And that's I need people like people on my team that are a little more cautious, that aren't afraid to speak their mind. They have to be solutions oriented. I'm definitely not someone that you can just bring a problem to and dump it on me, right? I want to know, like, well, okay, what are you doing about it? But so I've got a great group that they're very good at being able to say, hey, yeah, I like that. I like where you're thinking that, but let's think about what else. But we're also rolling these things out, right? And we're doing X, Y, and Z. And how do we make sure that we don't overwhelm people, right? Because what you learn, obviously, if you've ever rolled something broadly and didn't do a good job at change management, is it just takes forever. And it flounders and people are unhappy. We all know people in general don't like change. And especially when you're doing new, we're in a time, obviously we've been in a time for a number of years, and it went through it in the first iteration of platform, which was we're disrupting jobs. Like we're not just what you do every day, but we may be disrupting whether you have a job. And it's one of the things I think we actually did really well on our first platform project, which was we were very honest with our workforce and came out up front and said, here's where we're going and why we're going that way. And obviously we didn't lean into the cost savings thing, but there was a lot of other good parts about it. Right? There was this, when you look at some of the stuff we did, the self-guided touring and those pieces was really about helping our customers, right? And a lot of the jobs we eliminated were ones that had a ton of turnover and weren't great positions anyway, right? And so, but we came out and said, look, here's what we're going to do, and here's sort of the timeline, and we want to talk to you about what the other jobs look like. And then we've really leaned into that as we've gone through this next iteration on being very upfront, but also being purposeful about not falling into that trap of, well, how many positions could we eliminate with this? And I usually, when I have an idea or we're thinking about doing some new, I'll start it with, this doesn't save us any heads. It may eliminate these positions, but I want to take that payroll and we're going to do this with it, right? And it's new jobs, and AI is going to be a big driver of that over the coming years, right? I don't see AI in the next couple of years coming in and just eliminating a ton of jobs. It changes jobs, and it probably takes a lot of lower level menial work off our plate and allow us to use that brain firepower on new things, right? And more advanced things. And so that, to me, that's the key of the change management is the honesty, the openness, and just bringing people with you on the journey. It helps when it's a good change too. I'd say the funnel thing's been super successful because they saw it and they're like, oh, this is great. This is way better than that CRM that this team, my team built, right?
Glad we could help. Well, you nailed the point there that I was trying to unpack. I think you have to be honest. I think you have to be candid, and you have to listen, right? Yeah. I've found it's one of the mistakes I made early as a leader is you either go so far and you're okay, this is the plan and we're sticking to it, and you stop listening, or you hold back the truth because you're afraid that you're going to scare people. It's somewhere between there. This is where I'd like to go, but help me as we get there. And yeah, I think to your point, we heard feedback from the teams before they even went live with Funnel. This is what we expect the outcomes to be, but let us know. And then they felt a part of it. I also liked how you answered my next question, which is we're not going to humanless property management, right? Now there will be different roles. Yeah. And I want to ask you something that's not on the docket here, but I'm thinking a lot about it because I keep hearing it. Josh, I was just on a call this morning with somebody they're reaching out to Funnel and saying, hey, we went all in on AI. And the feedback that they're giving that we're seeing in like a lot of studies, right? I think it was Harvard who just released a study on this concept of cognitive offloading, which is that when you put too much weight on AI can do my homework, right? AI can do my leasing. But what I'm hearing from operators, this was the COO of a 5,000 unit company who said, my teams just aren't doing the baseline work anymore, right? And so I'm curious, to your point, where do you see the low-hanging fruit opportunities? We mentioned today, all right, so you guys for a long time have had AI helping schedule tours, right? Yeah. You guys, it's part of the reason we did our deal with you guys. That's table stakes, been that way for a long time. Yeah. But where are the areas that maybe you think, hey, we're probably going to reserve this for the human lane versus the areas that you're like, we still are way too manual. AI needs to take some of this work off. How do you think about that fork in there? Because I think people are becoming more conscious of the trade-offs of what we allow AI to own.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting that I've been around a while. This isn't my first hype cycle. Guys, a big one, but not the first one we've gone through, right? And
you graduated in one.
I graduated in a massive hype cycle, right? And we've taken a little more cautious approach as we've gone through. I think there's some areas I'm not willing to sacrifice on. And one of those is our customer experience and how our customers interact with us. And so you're right, we've used these initial AI systems to do basic answering questions, basic things like scheduling tours, that stuff. That's great, right? But at the end of the day, I don't want frustration because they're getting the wrong answer or they can't get to a person quickly. And I think it's going to be interesting. You see these in these hype cycles, and what's happened is everybody said, what are you doing with AI? So all these companies have gone, well, crap, we got to do something. And naturally it's things like call answering, right? And we're going to have it, or on the website or whatever, right? We're going to have it answer all of your questions. But what comes with that is a rising frustration from consumers with dealing with those systems because they're better, but we know they're not perfect, right? And they're not, I mean, at times they're not even great. They're just okay. I'm sure you've played a lot with ChatGPT and some of the other tools. It's not hard to make them hallucinate still, right? You can really throw them off. And it's one thing when you're trying to figure out, like, ask it who it thinks the best player on the 27 Yankees was and why or whatever, that who cares, right? But when you're talking about things that involve fair housing or policies and those sorts of things, that's a little more concerning, right? And you saw early examples of AI where it went down some pretty rough paths with whether it's sexism or racism, whatever, because it's just using the sources it has. We obviously don't want something like that sitting in front of our customers. And so we're very cautious with that. I think there's a ton of opportunity. Any business, you do a ton of day-to-day tasks. We've used a lot of robotic process automation. I think we'll be looking at use cases for things like exploring all of that customer feedback data, all our conversations and the customer experience stuff we've been working on, and how do we mine all of that data for larger trends? What I was going for before, right? Like, is the general sentiment changing, right? Is it not just we've had more complaints about maintenance? It's in general, people are talking this way, or you're getting more text messages than phone calls over time at this slower rate that may not be as noticeable. Those kinds of things, right? My worry with AI and throwing it in everything is people lose the ability to think critically when they're not doing it. And exercise, it's a muscle you have to exercise. And just a quick anecdote, I was talking to a friend who said they had an intern for the summer and they had a meeting about AI, and he was like, you should be using AI for everything. I haven't written a paper for 3 years. And they said, oh, okay, well, how could we use AI to solve some of our challenges here? And he said, oh, I didn't realize I was going to have to talk. Right? He can't think critically because he's just relying on this tool to do the things. So, I mean, obviously there's issues with the education systems and how do we adapt to these new models and everything. But I thought that was a perfect story on the dangers of just saying, oh, we're just going to throw it all to AI. But then are we really thinking are we spending time doing critical thinking and what the next pieces are? Are we just turning it over to this computer to do it all? And that's where you get back into stagnating.
Yeah. First of all, my excitement level around insights and macro level learnings, I couldn't agree more. There's even you and I as executives, there's a lot of data within my company that's still kind of hard to go get, right? Yeah. It's like, hey, can you, and I love the people that help me do that, but even they wish that it was more easy to access, right? Yep. I think that that's a huge opportunity for AI to just, on a simple query, and this is my vision for Funnel, that Josh could jump in at any given time and say, hey, I want to understand in this market, this thing, right? Help me, what are the renters saying there? And all that data is available to us. I think the challenge you and I both know, and you mentioned RPA, is getting to the data is still probably, so Funnel has all that, but can Funnel get it from the other systems? And so let me, last question, thinking about the future, and then we're gonna wrap with a couple of speed questions. But if you're in an organization that's not UDR, and genuinely we're very blessed that we have a lot of folks listen to this that are smaller operators, they think, well, geez, Josh has got all these resources. Where would you start to be prepared to get out of being behind? Because to your point, if nobody has the crystal ball, but the future is very exciting, there's a lot of AI use cases, what would you recommend to the average operator to be prepared for the changes that are coming, right? Because I'm fortunate I get to work with guys like you and Scott at Cortland who have spent the last 5-6 years being prepared for this moment. Yeah. What would you maybe advise somebody who's sitting using a normal tech stack today with the challenges that come with that?
Focus on your process. Despite being a technologist, I'm really a process guy. And that's probably back to my chemical engineering degree. And that's because that's all chemical engineering is how do I take this and make it this, right? And too often, and I think I've seen it at a lot of the conferences and questions I get at those things and talking to smaller operators, is that you get enamored by the tech stack. You get you're obviously being sold to by a bunch. These are tough jobs. There's a lot going on. Change is happening all the time. Someone's telling you, I can solve that for you with this tool. And I found in my career, very rarely does a tool just solve your problems.
Correct.
Right? It's if I could put the best tool out there on a crappy process, and it's going to be a crappy tool.
Yeah.
Right? And so to me, it's partner with, for those of you, those people still stuck in the business versus IT type of thing, break that wall down.
Yeah.
Right? And it's one of the first things that I help and push on, and Scott before me did, was this is not an us and them thing. We're a team. And I really pushed it in a year and a half ago. We moved all of technology into our core operations group. And that's because technology has to be a part of your operations. And anymore, it's almost a driver of a lot of it, right? And so getting out of that mindset and then focusing on how can you help the processes for the business will go so much further than just buying a bunch of tools and worrying about which AI tool you're going to buy. Don't worry about it right now. Get your processes sorted and figure out where you might need it, right? And when we hit that, the hype cycle starts going off on AI, and I was getting those questions, where are we going to use AI? And I said, we're not in the business of finding solutions looking for problems. We're in the business of looking for problems, and then we'll find solutions. And if AI is a good solution for it, fantastic. But I'm not just going to throw a tool out there hoping that it starts solving something.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that even the best technology companies are taking the same approach of, I don't need to pick if OpenAI or Llama or what's my best model. I need to be building for optionality, right? Like I need to be building for a future in which we're constantly learning and changing.
Yep.
But that is great advice. And I think that in particular, it is a very nice, easy tool to remember when being pitched anything, including funnel. Yeah. What is the process below that? Because I think in particular, the appeal of AI somehow like turns off people's brains of like, AI will do that, just like they're done asking questions, rather than, well, what is the, I mean, just an easy example of, I'm very excited about rent reminders, right?
Sure.
But when someone's ready to make a payment, can they make the payment in this AI reminder? No? Okay, well, geez, that's a good question next, right? How do I get the payment in front of them? So
how do I make it
really
easy, right? That. What's that flow?
What's the flow? What's the workflow? What's the exactly? And that's, I think, workflow, people in particular right now, even the buzziest term, agentic, all that means is using AI in a workflow.
Yes.
And do you feel good about your workflow? Do you feel good about your process? And then I think in particular, as you highlighted, we've seen right now it is a very litigious environment for operators. And therefore, do I want to turn that workflow over to the computers, right? Because there's lawsuits today about veterans getting billed move-out fees, right? Like there's a lot of reasons why humans should stay in the loop, even as you embrace those AI tools.
There are. Absolutely. I think it's an area to be somewhat cautious about, right? And make sure you got it right.
Agreed. Well, Josh, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I could obviously go another hour. We used the whole time here, but we're going to close, and we like to ask a couple of questions just so folks get to know you a bit better.
Okay.
But we got a billboard right outside my office. Right now it's got a dental ad on it, but I want to buy it, give it to Josh for a big opinion. What's an opinion, multifamily or otherwise, that you would put on a billboard you feel so strongly about?
Stop acting out of fear. So I think so much we operate worried about, oh, what about my job? What about this? What about that? And it holds us back so much. A while back, I gave up on a lot of that and just had confidence that, look, I'm good at what I do. I can do this. I have good ideas, and I'm going to put them out there. Okay. And I'm not going to be afraid to say it. And frankly, if I'm at a place where they don't want to hear my opinions or they don't think they're good, then that's probably not the place for me, and I can go find some place that does. And it's very freeing for you personally, but you also can have such a bigger impact on the organization if you're just not afraid to say what you think.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I similarly early in my career worked out of fear, and it was not good for my health. And
it's
I
not.
think that having a growth mindset and recognizing, hey, I can do more is a wonderful. It's freeing. You're right. That's the right word. All right. Well, if you had the opportunity to dedicate more of your time to a philanthropic cause, is there something near and dear to your heart that you would spend time on?
Yeah, I mean, the CU football team probably doesn't count as a philanthropic cause, so probably
You're the
not
booster
that.
for the city.
Yeah, I do have a heart for really children in third world countries. I've spent a lot of time in Haiti and Africa and other places, and so we do work with an organization now that does work in Ghana freeing child slaves that work on the fish on the lake. Still happening. And getting them back to their families and in schools and that. So yeah, if I had all the time and money, I'd be spending a heck of a lot more time working on that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Josh. All right, well, Funnel's got our tagline, which is renter-centric. But in Josh's world, in the UDR world, what does renter-centric mean to you?
Renter-centric for us really is customer-centric. Our residents and our prospects and our customers. I really like your tagline and how you've approached it that way, and really this business needs to be much more renter focused than business focused at times.
Love it. All right, two more here. Finish the sentence. The future of multifamily is?
I think it's bright. I think it's really interesting. When I started here 12 years ago, it was a sleepy industry. I think it's really woken up over the last 5 or 6 years. It's probably sometimes in cases a little too woken up, right? And then we're going through that glut of I have 18 solutions for the same thing, but that'll settle out. But I think we've got a lot of really smart folks. I do a lot of conversations and stuff with my peers and at conferences, and I'm always super impressed with how they're thinking about things and what they're doing. And I think it's just a super, super bright industry to be in.
Love it. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with the last point. The talent and the leadership in this industry, I think, is as good as it's ever been.
Yeah.
All right, and lastly, what's a value or principle you refuse to compromise on?
Honesty and integrity. I think if someone can't trust you, then why would they ever follow you, do anything with you, want to work with you? And sometimes honesty is hard, and it is tough to give messages, but everyone's better for it.
Yeah. Well, I again, like I said earlier, I've been very fortunate to work with the UDR organization, and I would much rather work with an organization that tells you your strengths, your weaknesses, their goals, their objectives, than holds that all back.
Yep.
And you're left guessing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a credit to the culture of the leadership there, and frankly, why you all continue to outperform the market is that culture of honesty, candor, but we can all win together.
We're all together.
It's
Yep.
refreshing.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, Josh. Well, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
Anytime.